boys and girls. It's time for the Freelance Report, brought to you by Maximus Health and Fitness, 130 East Main Street, Riverhead, and Michelangelo's at Mattatuck in the Mattatuck Plaza Shopping Center on the main road in Mattatuck. Good morning, Gianna.
Good morning, Bruce. So excited for our beverage update, East End Beverage update. We've got beer and wine.
Wait a minute. East End Beverage update.
That's
Is this
right.
like, like Coke, Pepsi?
No, we're talking about the
locally made celery soda?
No, but I think Southampton's got someone making sodas.
Yeah, I think Sag Harbor. That's in Sag Harbor.
No, there's ones in Sag Harbor, which is Little Miss Lady root beer, but then I had another one from Southampton. They've got some great local soda makers there as well. But no, we're talking about beer and wine.
And Darren doesn't deal in root beer, do you? And Brad Darrohn doesn't deal in root beer, does he?
No, so we've got
or celery soda.
At last, we're approaching
chocolate milk.
We're approaching 40 breweries on Long Island. On the East End alone, we've got 3 coming in, 2 looking at Riverhead, 1 looking at Mattatuck, and we've got Brad Darrohn on the show with us. He is starting a new brew tour company called the LI Brew Bus. Good morning, Mr. Darrohn. Get close to the microphone.
Good morning, everybody.
So there's all these accessory businesses popping up around our growing craft beer industry. I remember I was driving on the main road going out to Greenport one day, and I just see literally a mobile picnic table with a bunch of folks with sombreros, and they're going from, it looked like they were heading from Greenport Harbor in their Peconic location, where they're doing all their bottling now. So, there's stuff like this popping up everywhere. So, Mr. Darrohn, tell us a little bit about LI Brew Bus and what we can expect this summer.
Well, pretty much the LI Brew Bus is going to be more of an attraction than just a limo company. I realize there's a bunch of limo companies on Long Island. There's taxi services. There's ways for people to get to the brewer. Mm-hmm. But I think at this point now in the market, with these breweries opening up and more trying to open up, and that seems to be a trend going to be continuing for the next couple of years.
Right.
Really, we need something that's going to promote the entire marketplace to really grow the brewers, cultivate Long Island as a place to be known to go to for brew.
So you were talking about kind of changing up, doing different. How exactly will this work? Will people be getting on at different stops? Are these different trips that, you've got a certain number of breweries plans? How exactly will it work? What are you looking at?
Well, pretty much the scenario is, right now you have to book a bus in advance or a large transportation vehicle if you want a group of people to go and hang out and try the brews. There's no place where you can just kind of jump on a whim. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to create that. I think there was a hole in the market for that, so I wanted to fill that niche. So I thought of, all right, well, if I wake up on a Sunday and I got nothing to do, I want to be able to jump on some sort of mass transit so I don't have to drive and go to all these breweries, because they're so close yet they're so far away. So I'm like, all right, let's do a hop-on brew tour.
Okay.
Definitely a big play on the word hops.
Right.
I want to provide something where people can just, log online, buy their ticket, and meet at the meet spot and go on. And you don't have to meet the meet spot. You can meet at one of the breweries that we're going to. But each day will be 4 different breweries on Long Island.
Nice.
So
okay.
We'll keep that rotating, like that route, so we can get to see all the brewers. Mm-hmm. So again, sharing that exposure, growing everybody at the same time, kind of sharing on the whole growth process.
Well, doesn't it also feel, in a weird way, it's like, it keeps people from getting in trouble with the long arm of the law is what it does.
Right, exactly.
Were you thinking of that benefit when you did all this?
That's actually one of the first things I was thinking of. We had a zero tolerance a while ago, and
well, and out here, that's definitely the way of our world. Having had the wineries be the industry, really there is no shortage of DWIs. We've got, our officers parked, ready and waiting because nobody, you got to keep people safe. And if there seems to be, so you usually have like limos coming out to do the whole thing, and it is an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta.
Well, that's one thing. I don't want safety to be the reason why the exposure wasn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to be able to drink responsibly.
Right.
It says drive responsibly, but they should drink responsibly. So I want to provide an option for them. Obviously, you can have one person, and that person can drive maybe a Suburban, fit 8 people in there at most.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got that. But then there's people out there that's not making the market because they want to be safe. They don't want to drive from brewery to brewery to brewery to brewery, or even just to one brewery, because then they're still stuck.
So let's talk about the bus itself. What are you working with? I know that you're working on getting it on the road. How many people are going to be able to fit in this guy? Because I imagine it's going to be popular.
Is it going to be like a city bus?
Actually, it's a perimeter seating. It used to be a mass transit for a retirement home in New Jersey.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a nice 1998 Brewbird. It's a Bluebird bus. We call it the Brewbird.
Oh, nice.
But the reason why we went with this bus is because it has that old school look. It's the big flat front, the huge windows. The wheels are behind the driver, and the seats are in a perimeter seating, so everyone's looking at each other. Everyone's engaged with each other. Everyone can talk to each other and really get to, not only is it a way to go experience new beers, but it's a way to go experience and meet new neighbors.
Right.
Or even some tourists or something. Make some new connections.
So you're talking about picking up people at different spots, and then would you drop off?
We're going to do a central pickup location, which is going to be the Ronkonkoma train station.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to pick up and drop off there for many reasons. One, it's an artery to the city. We can get people from the city to come out and try our brew. Awesome. It's also so easy to get to. There's trains that go to it from all over the island. Every taxi service has discount rates to Ronkonkoma. Mm-hmm. There's paid parking where it's security parking. So if you want to leave your car there, you can.
Right.
It just makes a lot of sense to just have that be the main pickup point and drop-off point.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the
like the concept?
The concept. I mean, how did that? Because and let's in the interest of full disclosure, Brad's a retired radio rat.
Yeah. So I mean, was that part of it?
How did that come up? How did you come up with this? I mean, where did it come from in the first place?
It's actually like it just kind of fell together. I've been going through a change of just doing things I like to do to make money instead of doing things I don't like to do.
Right. You know what? Amen. Good for you.
And I like drinking beer, so I was when Blue Point opened, I was a regular Blue Point, the Blue Point Brewery. Those guys are amazing, and they kind of set the whole pace for everyone else in the island. They opened up, and I went there often, and I also bartended for like 15 years.
Right.
And I go to a bar. I get into work mode. I go to a club. I get into work mode. It's not where I want to go to hang out with my friends.
Right.
So I found myself, house parties, things like that. And that kind of, that's the same thing every time almost when you go to the same friend's house,
Mm-hmm.
So I want something different. And I found Blue Point Brewery. I'm like, wow, I can hang out. I'm meeting people I've never met. And it's like I'm hanging out in my friend's basement, or my friend's garage bar or something.
I forget if it was Greg from Long Island that I was speaking to that was saying sort of the same thing, that going to Blue Point was like an inspiration for him to get into. I forget who it was. I did an East End Brewery update. It just came out. It's the Express magazine. If you see it out there, it's all over the East End. And that was, I forget if it was Greg, but someone was saying that after work they would go to, Blue Point, and it was
a smile and a hello, and it's funny that was the place that everyone knew your name.
And the cool thing about the craft beer industry is that it is unlike other industries in that people are not as guarded about, how to start your own. They're very forthcoming with information about, you're serious, you wanna get into the industry. Well, this is what we did. This is what we use. It's a lot. it's a very cooperative industry from what I'm seeing.
Absolutely. I mean, like right now we're looking at the collaboration Saison from Long Island and Blind Bat. And you see that often.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You see collaborations all the time. You see help all the time. Longbeard Brewery.
Right.
They built the inside of my bus.
Did they?
They just built it. They just say, we'll build it. That's it. And so I have a nice homage piece to them in the bus. But yeah, they did all the work. Craig, one of the brewers, is a Hamptons woodworker. So he's doing like all the edges are routed. Like it's just amazing woodwork inside the bus. There's a wine barrel hiding the wheel wells. Like it's just amazing stuff.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
And for nothing? Like,
For
I
nothing.
mean,
For hey, we like what you're doing. Thank you so much for helping promote the market. We're behind you. And I'm getting the same response from all the breweries. And they do the same thing for themselves because this is, number one, they learn from each other. Mm-hmm. Number two, they understand that they're growing the market together. Mm-hmm. The more breweries around one area, the more reason for people to come to this area.
Right. That was another thing also, Greg.
Well, that's kind of like the old shoe store theory from, where when there's one shoe store on the street, it dies on the vine. But if there were 4 shoe stores, like Main Street Riverhead used to have on it 4 shoe stores. They all thrived. One shoe store, when it was down to the last shoe store, after Tanga Mall came in, that withered on the vine.
So then I guess
So I guess it's the same then with breweries,
we've got
though.
Sneaker Aquarium, and now we've got Kicks and Styles that just opened.
All the boutiques.
So it's coming back. Well, and the way that those guys, I guess, are functioning and able to kind of get by is that they've got a big online market behind them. If you're dealing in...
and young people.
Right.
I mean, young people will spend $100 on a pair of sneakers.
$100 as if they'll spend $200 or $300.
And you or me would not spend $100 on a pair of honest to goodness dress shoes.
I gotta pay less. I spent $30.
Because you can buy
I like
one.
them. You know who else is good? Famous brand shoes is good, and DSW is pretty good.
Yeah, and you're walking out of there, you spend $30-50, big smile on your face.
Yeah, but I think I got these for $50.
I know.
At DSW.
And teenagers are looking at us like, ugh.
Well, I mean, what we do is we take that money we save, and then we go and we buy local beer.
Right.
Well, there you go. That's
what
right.
we gotta do. We gotta buy the local beer.
Well, Mr. Darrohn, it was an absolute pleasure having us on. You're having a private meet and greet at the Paramount tomorrow night. If anybody wants tickets, call up the station, 727-1390, and we'll give you some tickets. And thank you so much for coming on the program. When we get back, Brewster McCall from McCall Wines.
Back on the Freelance Report, brought to you by Maximus Health and Fitness, 130 East Main Street, Riverhead, and by Michelangelo's of Mattatuck in the Mattatuck Plaza Shopping Center on the main road in Mattatuck. Gianna Volpe sits across the glass.
Yes, we are back with Brewster McCall, son of Russ McCall. He's an entrepreneur, started Gourmet Foods International, one of our country's largest importer. Are you importing and exporting food goods?
We're specialty food importing and distribution. We've just started exporting down in the Caribbean a little bit, but it's not really our focus.
Okay, and then also, taking sort of a stronger hand in or face at McCall Wines, which is in Cutchogue, and actually they just picked up some new vineyard acreage behind McCary in Cutchogue as well, but farther down the road, main road, which they're calling North Ridge Vineyards. Brewster, tell us a little bit about the new vineyard.
Well, we've been growing vines in Cutchogue since 1997 when Dad planted our Cutchogue Estate Vineyard. And that was part of a deal where he bought the farm property next to our home with the help of the Peconic Land Trust to preserve it from development.
Right.
They were going to come in and build 50 or 60 condos, and we didn't want to see that happen to our quiet little agricultural neighborhood. More recently, though, we worked again with the Peconic Land Trust to buy this new vineyard, which we're calling the North Ridge Vineyard. It was planted over 30 years ago by Dr. Christina, And if you remember the old Christina Vineyards on the main road, which is now where the McCary tasting room is.
Right.
Christina was then Gabrielson's and Galluccio and now McCary. So it changed hands a number of times. And in that process, this one parcel with a kettle hole and kind of the ridge of the hill behind it ended up in the hands of the Peconic Land Trust and was unfortunately not really well taken care of for many years. So we worked with them to first take a lease on the land, bring the vineyard back into shape to see if it would be a good producer. And what we found was this amazing 30-year-old Chardonnay and 35-year-old Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon that had been neglected for so long was still phenomenal. It started giving us the most beautiful fruit that we've seen from any Cab Franc vineyard we've had the opportunity to taste or purchase from. So we grabbed that land and we started making some good wine from it.
And I know you guys have kind of planted new I guess taken clippings from these 30 and 35-year-old plants and planted new little vines between them.
Yeah, in the process of, in years of someone not really taking ideal care of this vineyard, whenever a vine dies, you usually replant in between the two existing vines, put a new one in there, and kind of keep your vineyard maintained and at a good level. It hadn't really been done, so we had to do a lot of interplanting recently, and we thought, we're not exactly sure which clone this was when it was planted, so the best way to replicate what you already have is to take cuttings from your own plant.
Right.
Graft them onto some American rootstock and interplant yourself with your own wood.
I want to talk about your relationship with the Peconic Land Trust in a minute, but I want to first talk about this space and why the being planted on the ridge so close to the kettle hole, why this makes it such an attractive place for vines.
Well, ideally, any hillside or ridge is going to be perfect for grapevines. They like to struggle a little bit, and the soil quality on those steeper slopes and higher altitude or higher topography areas are usually washed of their nutrients a little bit.
Right.
You also get phenomenal drainage, incredible exposure to the sun, no runoff from anywhere else. So you're getting a bit of a pure, just higher ground advantage, literally.
And the kettle hole is such a magical, cool little space. Explain to the listeners what exactly a kettle hole is.
Well, it's cool. So much of Long Island was created by glacial activity, millennia ago. And kettle holes are around on the North Fork. You don't see them often, which I think is pretty cool. Any something unique you have in your landscape always tends to mean that there's a different kind of soil in the ground or a different pattern of drainage, which can be exciting to grape growers because it's all about having something unique. The kettle hole on our property is pretty large. You can take a Jeep and drive down to the bottom of it, do some donuts and come back up, and no one would even know that you had gone underground. But it's really just where a huge piece of ice left over from the glacier was holding a spot, and as it melted last, you get this great depression in the land. They're also called cow hollows because the old school farmers used to pull their livestock into those holes because there was no wind or harsh winter weather as much in the lower depressions.
Oh, and
So
speaking
people put their cows down there.
Speaking of cows, you guys have some beautiful Charolais grass-fed cows, and would you ever consider having those guys in the cow?
The cows in the cow hollow? Well, we might, but what we would do differently, what we're doing differently from traditional farming, is that our cows are entirely on a system of crop rotation. We don't want to give them antibiotics at any point because we are practicing organic. Mm-hmm. So you can't leave them in one spot for more than a few weeks. The problem with cows, and if I can geek out on you a little bit, is...
Please.
And it might be a little unappetizing for those of us eating breakfast.
Oh, they'll get over it.
Cows, when they're left in the fields with their own feces for too long, will get worms.
Right.
Because the worm's life cycle goes through the manure on the ground. So if you're constantly shifting the ground they're on, not only are you maintaining a good level of health for the grass and for the ideal situation for fixing nitrogen, which the beef industry is generally not very good at. They're good at stripping nitrogen usually. You're creating an environmental situation where you're helping the environment, but you're also making sure that your cows never have to go through the process of getting worms and getting dewormed. You don't have to give them antibiotics.
So it wouldn't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. We could conceivably put them in the kettle hole, but not for very long.
Right.
They don't stay anywhere for very long.
So yeah, and then I mean you'd have to transport them. It's not exactly like right next door to where they're staying now.
We could herd them down Main Road, but maybe not in this busy summer season.
Yes. So what's I find fascinating about you guys is your dedication to stewardship of the land and your relationship with Peconic Land Trust. So, Brewster, if you don't mind talking a bit about what stewardship is and, why you find it so important. I know you guys are originally from Georgia. Does that inform, was your experience down south, does that inform why you believe so strongly in land preservation?
Well, I don't know. I think my father moved to Georgia in his high school years, but he grew up in Brooklyn and Long Island. And our summer home in Long Island has been in our family since 1902.
Right.
So we've always returned to this little house in Cutchogue every summer for my entire life. So there's a long sense of family history there, and I think that's where the idea of stewardship really came from in my family, in my immediate family. Is here we are, this generation taking care of this house that we're lucky enough to have because my family's maintained it in their own property scheme, over these decades and decades, or even beyond a century now.
So this is a homegrown...
having a sense of stewardship, knowing that you're not the only one who's going to be here, and you better keep it nice for the people down the line, applies on a larger level. It applies to our community. It applies to our environment, and we live also on an estuary that that Dad has purchased and turned into a bird sanctuary as well. So every year we're trying to make sure that we have a place for the shorebirds to hang out and have some eggs and have some chicks. And
like the plovers?
People and their dogs off the property, stuff like that.
Because I know
the farm is an extension of that.
The piping plovers in particular, which is
we've had some plovers on our beach. They're great, and terns. We had nesting terns last year. We've seen plovers, but we haven't seen nesting activity yet. But the terns have decided they like nesting on our beach for some reason, and we're thrilled about it.
Oh, how cool is that? Yeah, the plovers they're little guys. So it's like, you really got to be careful. And they bury their eggs in the sand, and they're really tiny. So it's like, you really do need to be careful. I know they kind of rope off plots if they see nesting activity, which can be seemingly inconvenient for people that want to go to the beach, but it can be super easy to trample. A little inconvenience for some beachgoers. I mean, forgive me if I sound a little callous, but I really don't care. It's more important for the life and the life cycle of a threatened bird to be protected than someone's picnic. And in my opinion. No, and that doesn't sound callous, and it is good that there are people like you and like your father out there because, it can be difficult to there needs to be people out there fighting for this kind of stuff. It's an uphill battle.
Environmentalism is always an uphill battle.
Right.
Because people see money in the short term and they think, I can develop this piece of property into 10 houses and get some, and go get a retirement home in Florida or whatever. And that is all fine and good and within your rights as a citizen, but it's short-sighted for us as stewards of our communities and for people who are inhabiting this space that's been this way for thousands of years. You can't undo a development. You can't go bulldoze houses and watch the trees grow back. So
you make a very interesting point with preservation and the environment and things like that. But I'm thinking one of the hot ticket topics out here is nitrogen in the soil, which ends up in the groundwater, which has made its way to the base and all that sort of jazz. And I'm thinking, and I Let me ask. I mean, how does that impact wine grapes? Or does it impact them at all?
Well, the nitrogen that you hear about in the runoff that's impacting our bays isn't nitrogen being fixed into the soil. It's nitrogen runoff from fertilizers. We don't use those kinds of fertilizers on our farm, and we're very sensitive to that. The main problem of many forms of livestock farming and farming in general is fixing nitrogen into the soil. Very few plants, or there are very few ways of doing that. But getting the nitrogen from the air, from the fertilizers, and making that a natural soil-based nitrogen again. A lot of times you lose nitrogen in the soil, which is why farmers often plant beans or sudex as a cover crop. But the beef industry, of course, is highly criticized because they can cause a lot of runoff and they can destroy a lot of land with these grazing animals. We're trying to fight that. The nitrogen runoff is a major problem, and, you know, I think a lot of it comes from more, if it's not from a sewage spill, it's from chemical fertilizers on people's lawns.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I was thinking is that Nassau County is, of course, heavily sewered. Western Suffolk County is heavily sewered. So we're depleting the water table and essentially dumping it in the ocean after people have flushed. And at some point, Nassau County already has saltwater intrusion problems into the water table. And I'm wondering, you know, how does that find its way out here? Or will it find its way out here?
Well, and
then what do we do for an encore?
Well, I think
what we can do now is prevent as much as we can future developments and reckless developments,
right,
and try to promote the organic farmers in our community, the agricultural people in our community who are setting a good example, who are finding clean sources of energy, who are rotating their pastures or crops properly, who are not using the chemical fertilizers. The best thing you can do is support the people who are doing things the right way.
Right. I mean, my dad did his master's thesis on the impossibility of deurbanization, because sort of once it's done, it's difficult to undo. Brewster, thank you so much for coming on the program. We'll have you back again to talk about meat production. When we come back, we'll put a bow on this.
Well, we thank the sponsor.